Earlier, when we were teaching sit and down, we started shopping for performance on verbal cues. Now let's perfect those skills and start chipping away at a true verbal discrimination. This can be calculus for some dogs, but it's very illuminating to teach. We are such verbal creatures, it can astound us how much less so dogs are. There's a ton of truth in the famous Gary Larson cartoon. You may have seen it. A man is giving detailed instructions to a dog, and what the dog hears is blah, 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 ginger. We are convinced that dogs understand every word that we say, when in fact, they catch occasional slim slices of relevant sounds. A couple of reminders. Add a verbal cue once you have performance for a faded signal, the small hand signals. Always precede the signal with the verbal and put a good 2 beats in between. And then shop. Shop to see at what rate your dog is jumping the prompt. I'll be monitoring to see how often Lulu sits before I have the chance to deliver the signal. Once she's spontaneously doing so at around 60%, a 3 for 5, we can start to require her to do so. What that means is that we can make it more costly for her when she doesn't jump the prompt. Let me show you. I'm going to check on Lulu's response to verbals by doing a standard operation of verbal first, then the small signal, and counting how many times she jumps the prompt. First behavior is sit from stand. Good girl. Sit. Good girl. There's 1 for 1 on prompt jumping. I'm ready to deliver the prompt if I have to. Sit. Good girl. 2 for 2. What I'm after is at least a 3 for 5, because then I know if I'm requiring her to go on verbal, sit. Good girl. I'm going to get, at worst, a stick set. So she's 3 for 3. That's no good. So this is the new part, is she's now going to learn that sitting before I give her the cue is no longer okay. So it's good that she jumps the prompt, but it's not okay if she jumps the cue. This teaches the dog that our verbiage, sit, down, etc., is critical information, that is saying opportunity knocking, that not all sits are rewarded, only the ones where I say sit. Sit. Good girl. Excellent. Sit. Good girl. Okay, so now I'm going to require her to go on the cue. So no more hand signals. If she does not go on the verbal cue, it's going to be an error. Alrighty. Sit. Good girl. 1 for 1. Later on, I'm going to mix it up, but for now, no, too bad. This is new for her, that not all sits are okay. Sit. Too bad. A little bit of sit. Good girl. Very nice. Sit. Good girl. Okay, so that's a stick, because we had the down error and we had the jump the cue error. Sit. I'm going to call that an error. Too bad. It's terrible. Sit. Good girl. 1 for 2. Too bad. Too early. Right idea, wrong time. Sit. Good girl. Very nice. 2 for 4. Sit. Good girl. 3 for 5. That's another stick. Sit. Good girl. Dogs will learn that cues are opportunities not to be missed. Sit. Good girl. 2 for 2. Good girl. Oh, too bad. In everyday life, you don't have to mark it the way I am telling her that she made an error. You can just ignore off-cue sits. Sit. Good girl. Very nice. It's a 3 for 4. That I don't care about because I haven't told her to do sit or down or anything. So that's neither here nor there. Lulu. Sit. Good girl. Excellent. So now I'm going to work on down from sit. And I'm going to give her signal. I'm going to count how many times she jumps the prompt and see if she's ready for verbals. Get this, I'm not working on this. Down. That one is really tough. There was intention before I gave the verbal, but I'll see if that comes back to haunt me. Sometimes those gray area calls. Come here, sweet. There we go. Down. That one was a little clearer. Good girl. All righty. Sit. Good girl. Put some in the bank there. Down. Good. So I'm 1 for 3 on prompt jumping. 1 for 2 on prompt jumping, excuse me. A little bit of surfing around. Good girl. Sit. Excellent. Down. Go, good girl. Whoops. I'm going to call that a neither here nor there trial. I'm not going to count that because she did it, but then she popped. And really is a judgment call. So I'm not even going to count that trial. Get her up. So I'm still on a 1 for 2. Sit. Good girl. Down. Good girl. There's a 2 for 3 on jumping the prompt. Had she not gone down, I would have signaled her, still paid her. Down. Good girl. 2 for 4 on prompt jumping. That's a classic example of you pay even though you signal, because at this point we're just auditioning the verbal to see if she's ready to have the verbal be required. Excellent. Who's good? Down. Good girl. So that's a 2 for 5. She's not ready yet. I need to have a stick, so I'm going to do another set. Who's good? Too bad. You know what? I'll just sit her, because that's something I'm going to need later anyway. Excellent. Down. Good girl. This is very confusing for dogs. They're not learning to do the behavior. They're learning when to do the behavior. And that's the difficulty of verbal cues. They're less literal than signals, which signals remind them of the original training process. Down. Good girl. For 1. Good girl. Pay that. Down. Good girl. So she's still kind of literal on her down, but that's fine. Very normal. I've had dogs that took many, many repetitions to start doing a given position for a verbal cue. Down. Got a flinch that time. Tiny flinch on one leg. So she had the thought of, I wonder if the answer is down. But she did wait for the signal. Clever girl. Down. Another flinch. But a doubtful. I mean, she thinks about going down, but she's just very doubtful that that could possibly be the right answer. Good girl. Down. Clever girl. Good. So I'm not getting any prompt jumping. So far I've got nothing to count. So I'm just going to keep doing. This is our holding pattern that I talked about when we first introduced verbal cues. We stay in this kind of constant stick state of verbal, 1001, 1002 signal, and then once the dog starts jumping the prompt, we start counting to see how many times they do that. Clever girl. Down. Good girl. And I may as well go ahead and start sticking my verbal sit on this because she's pretty reliable. And that's a very small hand signal. Down. Good girl. Sit. Flinch. I think probably you all saw that flinch, where she was making the move to down. Almost jumped it that time. So that's a canary in the coal mine. I'm expecting in the next 3 or 4 trials I'll get a winner. Good girl. Down. Good girl. Sit. Oh, good girl. That was a surprise. She jumped the prompt on sit from down. That's a very tough behavior, especially for a big dog. A lot of tonnage to lift up there. Good girl. Down. Good. She was starting to go down as I gave my cue. Another nice early little sign. Sit. Good girl. Fancy and a bonus. Down. Clever girl. There we go. That's our first bona fide prompt jump without her going before the verbal, so we love that. Sit. Yes. And what happens when you practice this and then they sleep and you practice a little bit more and then they sleep, the day comes when it's almost as though, and it's not, that's not the actual process, but it's as though the dog is thinking, so the content of the blah, blah, blah actually has meaning. And it's to do a specific thing. And it's very, very much like, the Helen Keller moment where she understands that words have meanings. Very magical. Down. Good girl. But it's a process. Sit. Girl. Down. Girl. Sit. Good girl. Had a little bit of a different picture that time with both hands behind my back. Down. Atta girl. Clever girl. All righty. So that looked good. That was ready now to be required. I had a 5 for 5 in there on the target behavior. The target behavior was not the sit from down. That was strictly a bonus she gave me. The target behavior was down from sit. And so now I'm going to do a set where she must go on the verbal. Let's see how she does. So this is hard. I'm going to pay my setup. Sit. Down. So current criteria is when I give the verbal cue down, she goes down. If I don't give her the verbal cue down, she must not go down. She says, don't talk to the camera, talk to me. Too bad. Sit. Yeah, good girl. Down. Atta girl. Cues are important. They tell her when she might win the game. Good girl. Down. She was coughing. Down. I'm going to give her that one because she coughed exactly at the moment that I gave her verbal. So I'm going to be generous there. See what happens if I end up with off-cue downs. Sit. What a good girl, boy. Too bad. Too early. Atta girl. Thank you. Down. Ah. That one's a no, neither here nor there. I'm not going to count that one because she was flinching as I gave the cue, so technically, too bad. Too bad. I'm going to give her a little bit of a response cost. She's jumping the gun a little bit, and me walking away, even just for a few seconds, crashing the rate of reinforcement temporarily is a bit of a penalty. Sit. And the penalty is for, don't be precipitous. Wait for the cue. Good girl. This is not easy for dogs, especially impulsive dogs like Lulu. Down. Good girl. Technical parlance, this is called stimulus control, and that means that the behavior is tightly aligned with that cue. Doesn't happen when you don't give the cue, or at least it's never reinforced when you don't give the cue, and it always happens reliably when you do give the cue. Sit. Good, a good girl. I'm going to wait. Down. Good. That was a really nice, convincing one. I gave her just enough time that she didn't go down. I was waiting, and almost as though her reward for not going down off cue was I gave her the cue to go down. Now I'm going to try down from a stand. And this is a hard one. Down. Too bad. The intervening sit is no good. Try again. I need her on her feet for this. Down. Down. Good. Excellent. So that's would have been a 1 for 3 on prompt jumping. Lulu. Down. Boom. Excellent. 1 for 4 on the prompt jump, because that one I had to give the signal. Remember, I'm going to pay if I have to give the signal, but I'm not going to count it in my statistics for determining whether she's ready to have the cue be the only thing she's given. Down. Good. So I'm still a 1 for 5, so she's not ready. I'm going to do another set because she's not ready yet to have it required that she go on the verbal for down from a stand. Lulu. My rate of reinforcement is kind of low, and that's what you're seeing. She's starting to say, boy, this is getting very hard and I'm not winning very much. So one thing I can do to boost my rate of reinforcement is to pay my setup stand. Get her on her feet. Lulu, come a bit. Good girl. Pay my setup stand. Down. Yes, good girl. So she did it, but she did it for the prompt. Lulu. Down. Good girl. Pay my setup stand. Down. Atta girl. Had no dog there when I gave the verbal. She was attending elsewhere, but I'm going to carry on with my trial nevertheless. Make sure my mechanics are working the right way they should. Good girl. Pay my setup stand. Boost my rate. Down. Good girl. That looked a little bit like it would have been an intervening sit. So I don't think she's ready for verbals for down from a stand. That's really normal because that's the newest behavior for her. It's also a really tough one. Now we're going to practice discrimination, where instead of doing the same one over and over for verbal, I'm going to actually mix it up. And the two that are credible for her to do are sit from stand and down from stand. So rather than doing a series of sit from stand for verbal, I'm going to mix it up with down from stand, all for verbal only, and see if she can do this. Down. Good girl. That one she needed the signal. That's fine. And once again, when you do this, mix it up. Don't always do a pattern of one sit, one down, because dogs will learn that pattern. Get her on her feet. Good girl. Sit. Good girl. Excellent. Down. There was an intervening sit, but boy, that's a judgment call, that one. Not convinced by it, but I'm going to pay it. Down. Too bad. Try again. Down. Excellent. Ooh. Down. So I'm going to do a little series of downs, And then I'm going to throw in a sit. And one more down. Come on, baby duck. Down. See if she'll do a sit for me. Here she comes. Sit. Oh, now that was quite something. Because I had just done a series of downs, in many dogs' minds, that is the latest trick syndrome, where, okay, the right answer now is down, so you can tune out the verbiage. But she did not do that. When I switched to sit, she gave me a very authoritative, confident sit, which means she's really, really starting to have this down. We're going to switch gears now, and we're going to see what happens when we work on our positions with two dogs at the same time. Here we are with both Moxie and Lulu, and we're going to practice some position changes with both of them, and then we might even try a stay. When you're working with two dogs at once, if they're at different levels, that can be very difficult. So what I suggest you do is get the dogs to approximately the same level, because then you're not trying to think of two different criteria at the same time. They're both at approximately the same level, and so I'm going to see who sits and who downs on cue. Sit. Good girl. Help her. And then, because Lulu is holding a sit stay while I do my latency for Moxie, I'm going to pay her for doing her sit stay. That's very polite while I'm working on another dog. Down. Very nice. So they both won at that one. Sit. Very nice. Moxie's had a little bit less, so it's a little bit newer for her. And because Moxie sort of popped into a sit and Lulu held her sit stay the whole time, she's going to get something for her stay. Down. Very nice. Down from sit so far is looking a little bit stronger, but let's see if we can get both. Sit. Actually, I'm aiming it a bit more at Lulu, and Lulu's got a stronger verbal, so I might be better off aiming my signal a little bit more at Moxie. Down. Very nice. Very, very nice. Sit. Very nice. One for you, one for you. Doesn't matter what order you feed the dogs, mix it up if you can possibly do it, or whoever was the cleverest, or whoever's the most convenient. Don't worry about any other consideration, as long as they both get paid. Down. Good girl. Too bad for Lulu. That's terrible. She's saying, I can't possibly do that. So she doesn't get paid for that one. Incentivizes her for next time. Sit. Good girl. And I'm not wild about that bark. Good girl. Down. Good girl. I'm going to signal for you, and I'm going to pay that. Let me see if I can get a stay. Try. I'm going to warm it up a little bit. They both had walk-around stays, but this is a little bit different because one, there's another dog right next to me, and they are familiar with each other, but they're not best friends. And two, I'm doing a wider circle. So this is a significant generalization issue. Good girls. If one breaks, I'm going to say too bad, but then immediately feed the other, which is downright confusing. But it's the best system I've been able to come up with, unless you can have different commiseration words for two dogs. And I'm at an age where that's just not going to happen. Luckily, this ends up being, though imperfect, good enough. There we go. And I've got a push, and I didn't even get a flinch from either dog. And because we've done this before, go ahead and try a walk around. Excellent. Very nice. That was extremely good. Let me try my other direction. Oh, too bad. Pay off the other dog. Down. Doesn't want to go down, so thank you for holding your stay while Lulu had her little moment of deer in the headlights where she's like, I have no idea what you want me to do. That's exactly it. Because this is so challenging and I got it at all, I'm going to go ahead and pay that. So I'm going to try my other direction walk around, and if I get away with that, I think I'm going to try some distractions. I'll try some ball bounces and see what happens. Very nice. Fancy, fancy. See what happens on a double walk around. They both look quite dug in, but I'm ready at any second for them to break because this is a very different situation. Good, good, and good. Get a ball to bounce. As they both stayed while I did, I actually turned my back on them to get my ball. So you know what, I'm going to pay that. And I'm ready now for all kinds of fireworks. And look at that. They could not be cleverer. Very good. These are quite clever girls. They're being extremely fancy. You'll notice that Moxie, who is our mat dog, we're continuing to do her downstay on the mat to keep that behavior double dipped, so that for her a downstay is when we ask you to do one, but there's also this other cue, the prop cue, which means do one whenever we pull out that particular mat. Oh, too bad. Finally, I have a break. Now, oh, mayhem. Oh, it's too bad for everybody. We've got to start all over again. Oh, so let me get him in position. And I'm going to try my little ball roll one last time just to see if I get lucky. Girl. Down. Oh, too bad. No, everybody's being naughty, so nobody's getting anything right now. Okay. So let me get Lulu down first. They're both, what do you want us to do? What do you want us to do? Down. Atta girl. Moxie. I want Moxie on her mat. I'm going to pay Lulu for holding her down while Moxie was mucking around. Excellent. Thank you. Very good. Very good. Good. Oh, too bad. Almost got away with it. Moxie. Moxie. Oh, too bad. Terrible. Down. This is really tough, as you can see. Ready? Oh, that's not going to help you. She's distracted by the ball. And no, that's not going to help you. Ready? Down. Moxie. See if I can get Moxie onto her mat. There we go. Whoops. Down. Good girl. Down. Excellent. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take the money and run. I've got them positioned the way they want. I'm going to end on this, and next time, if I do this again, I'll try my ball roll. But they did really well, didn't they? Now you have an appreciation of how tough it is for dogs to get their heads around the specific content of verbal cues. There is the occasional dog with specific aptitude for this, but it's a minority of dogs. Most dogs guess. They guess until we escalate the cost to the point that they are compelled to utilize the verbal cue. So when they guess, are they guessing randomly? Far from it. Their guesses, their biases, are based on a few different things. First, aggregate or cumulative reinforcement. If a dog has had a lifetime history of 200 reinforcers for sit, 150 for down, he goes with sit. Second, recency. He's had those 200 reinforcers for sit and 150 for down, but the last 80 in a row were for down. He goes with down. It's also called latest trick syndrome. No matter what you cue, he coughs up the latest trick you taught. Third, order of events. Dogs are really good at orders of events, which we are trying to actually exploit later on in respondent conditioning. But it's a confound in verbal discrimination. You may have had or seen a dog where you say, sit, and the dog cycles through sit, give a paw, down, and roll over because that's the sequence they're always in. Once we shake up that sequence, he gets a headache. It's a big mess. Finally, a little less often, but it can happen, dogs go with preferred behaviors. It might be that some behaviors are less expensive. For instance, some dogs are more gravity susceptible than others. They love downstay, they hate getting up from downstay. For others, movement is cheap and non-movement is tougher, athletic, impulsive youngsters. And it could be some dogs just get a kick out of some behaviors. I had a border collie to whom I taught a hold object, drop object, and throw object verbal discrimination. She really liked to throw, which made it a usable reinforcer. I could pay her with food, and I could also pay her drops and her holds with letting her do a throw. Very pre-Mackie. If you practice verbal discrimination, you'll get insight into your own dog's particular biases, what they're basing their guesses on. You may, for instance, find out that your dog is literally Pavlov's dog and reliably trots out orders of events, or not. Either way, you'll be gaining insight into what makes him tick.